Hi, everyone. I'll wait another 30 seconds or so for folks to show up from the waiting room.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Keith.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Good. All right, we're down to just a couple people in the waiting room. They will find their way in. So my name's Brian Payne. I'm the Executive Director of CDFI Friendly Bloomington. This is the COVID-19 Navigating Business Support for local small businesses and nonprofits. First thing I'll say is Zoom etiquette. Please do mute your mics unless you're actively speaking. So if everyone could take a moment and do that now. But thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go over housekeeping and our roadmap for 2 to 3 minutes, and then we're going to get straight to the information. So thank you again for taking the time to be here. Thank you for the businesses and nonprofits working hard to survive and keep serving our community. And thank you to the volunteer experts and lenders who have agreed to join us for this event. So housekeeping issues. If there are technical issues, please put your problems in the chat. Write the hosts a note and say you're either having trouble getting in or you can't ask a question, or you can email at economicvitality@bloomington.in.gov, and we'll put that in the chat in a moment. And then for Q&A, when we get to a Q&A portion, the way that'll work is similar. So if you have a question for the panelists, put it in the chat, and then as moderator, I will facilitate and bring up the questions to the panelists one by one. And then at the end of the general agenda, there'll be a breakout opportunity where the lenders who are doing PPP will each have an individual breakout room where you can engage directly with them, ask them questions about a variety of financial areas, and certainly how to apply for PPP and how to apply for other programs. If what you'd like to do is ask questions of the ESR working group from the city or the county or the Small Business Development Center, stay in the main Zoom chat. And you can ask your questions of us there during the breakout. But Aaron Predmore will explain more about that in a second. So the basic goals are simple. We want this to be a single source info session for small businesses, nonprofits needing COVID-19 relief. We want it to be one-stop shopping for guidance on PPP, EIDL, the local Bloomington and Monroe County grant and loan programs, a forum for questions about any of those, and a platform for you to actually engage with the lenders who can help you pursue these programs. So we hope that we will give you timely information on those, on the CARES Act updates that were passed yesterday, provide that forum, and raise awareness about our local rapid response fund, because we have more than $1 million that has been convened by the city of Bloomington and the ESR team that has not been applied for yet. So we have money and we know folks need it, and we want to make sure that the applicants who need it most are aware. So briefly to go over the agenda, we will talk about the rapid response loan program at the city, the COVID-19 relief grant program at the county. That'll take 15 to 20 minutes. Then we will talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. We'll have Cindy Canarney from First Financial Bank to answer your questions about that. And then at the end of both of those presentations, we'll have a short 10-minute Q&A period where anybody on the Zoom call can ask questions in the chat, and the whole group will be able to hear the answers. After that, the lenders who are here will identify themselves really briefly, just two to 3 minutes each, say who they are, who the institution is, and what eligible clients it can serve. And then we will give you instructions for how to join the breakout rooms. So without further ado, I will kick it over to Alex Crowley from the City of Bloomington to talk about the Rapid Response Fund program.
Thanks, Brian. I understand that occasionally my mic on my computer fades in and out. So Brian, if you hear that happening, if you just chime in so that I'm aware of it, because I'm not going to be watching chat. My name is Alex Crowley. I'm the Director of Economic and Sustainable Development for the City of Bloomington. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for spending the time today. I'm going to share my screen and then take you through high level the background of the Economic Stabilization and Recovery Working Group that was put together by the mayor, and then talk specifically about the Rapid Response Fund loan program. So if you give me 1 second here. Everybody can see my screen? Okay, so the Economic Stabilization and Recovery Working Group is a group of leaders from around the community who got together about a month ago. They are listed and pictured here. And we've been working hard over the last month on basically 3 phases of an effort that will hopefully be taking us out of this pandemic. The first phase, and the one that we'll focus on today, is what we're calling rapid response. And we established a loan fund with the help of City Council, who allocated $2 million from the food and beverage tax, and then the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, another $500,000 of support for a combined $2.5 million. It's a little, it has different purposes, but basically that money is available. About $2.35 billion are available for direct loans, and then there's some other activity that's being funded out of that. So that is what we're calling rapid response. We're also, as a group, looking at recovery, which is sort of the 3-month to 12-month period, and looking at what that kind of period of time will require in terms of revenue generation for businesses, kind of reopening issues, all of that. And then finally, the revitalization phase, which is the 3rd phase, and revitalization covers the period from 12 months out, where we need to rebuild and hopefully rebuild better than we were before. So those 3 phases have been the area of focus for this group. I want to tip my hat to everybody in this group. It's been a really great collaboration, and these people are working very, very hard on behalf of the community to help us in those 3 phases. So let me focus today on the Rapid Response Fund and start by giving you the link. So the Bloomington Rapid Response Fund Loan Program information, and I'll pivot over to this website so you can see it, can be found at bloomington.in.gov, which is the city's website, /business. So I will toggle over to that and we can go through what's captured there, but I want to make sure that everybody who needs that link or who knows of anybody who needs that link, please help us to distribute that information. And let me now move over to that, what you see when you click on that link. So the landing page is this page, if you can see it, that has business is the city website, right? So it's the business page, starts with some information about the department, but it quickly goes to the Rapid Response Fund. And it describes the information. I'll scroll down quickly through it, describes it, and I'll go through some of this, what it takes to qualify, what the terms are. It has a preview of the application, which is important. So you can click and you can see a PDF of the application before actually entering the application. So it gives you a sense of what kinds of questions will be asked. Talks a little bit about where the funding's coming from, and then also lists some good resources down towards the bottom of technical assistance and other ways that you can kind of either be supported or support businesses and nonprofits. And then finally, down at the bottom, this button down here, which is apply for the Bloomington Rapid Response Fund loan, is where, if you're ready and when you're ready to make the application, you click there and it'll take you to a platform that's been developed to essentially carry you through the application process. So I'm going to scroll back up and start to talk a little bit about basically qualifying for the loan and then what the terms are. So to qualify for the loan program, a business or, and this should say nonprofit, we'll change that, must either be a Bloomington-based business, in other words, the physical address within the city limits. And we've gotten a lot of questions as to whether or not someone is actually inside the city limits. So if you're unclear about whether you are, you can either go to the City of Bloomington website, there's and there's city maps in there, or you can send an email to economicvitality@bloomington.in.gov. And we're trying to be very timely in our responses from that email box. So you can just ask and we can check for you. Anyway, you need to have a physical address in the city limits or be a nonprofit that resides in or serves Bloomington. So for the cases of nonprofits, you can actually be outside of the city limits, but we will ask you how it is that you're serving within the city limits. You also have to have at least one full-time equivalent employee, and that also includes sole proprietors, but and not have more than 250 full-time employees or equivalents. The third qualifying point here is you need to demonstrate a material negative impact due to COVID-19 in revenue or in your ability to maintain employees and payroll. So what we want is to make sure that this is focused on people who need help, not just anybody, regardless of whether they need help. And then as an organization, you must have been open prior to February 29, 2020. So we want to make sure that, you know, people were around before this all started to hit. The terms are pretty simple. Any loan can be up to $50,000 per loan. There's a 2% interest rate. The loan term is 36 months, so it's a 3-year term. You can defer payment on that loan, the first payment, up to 6 months. So you know the clock starts on the 36 months, but you can defer up to 6 months for your first payment. And then if you pay that loan back within 12 months, it is interest-free. So any interest that would have been paid during that first period would be returned to you. So it's effectively an interest-free loan. So those are the terms. We tried to set them up that way to highlight the fact and really to reflect the fact that the design of this program is not meant to carry an organization on its own. It's really meant to be a bridge to either PPP or other federal programs or other programs that might exist in the future, potentially from the state, that can help organizations. We do not have locally the amount of money that it would take to carry the economy. That's better done by federal and state programs. What we can do though is, and what we have been doing, is funding people to carry them, not only until they get the money, but even into that sort of post-federal funding stabilization period, and then hopefully things kind of start to get back to normal, or revenue generation starts up again, and people can retire the loans as quickly as possible. So again, just any questions that you might have about this, you can email to economicvitality@bloomington.in.gov. That's an email address that drops to a couple of people, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Be sure to click to preview the application by clicking here, so that you know what to collect as you go through it. You can start an application and then save it and stop and come back. And so once you get into the platform, it's pretty flexible. And again, to wrap up, the button that you want to click is the first of the 3 green buttons down here that will allow you to access the platform. Let me, before I wrap up, just address a couple of things that have come across, and I just want to clarify. Number one, the loan program is not closed. In other words, it's open, it's rolling, it's going in real time. People continue to apply, people are continuing to get approved. So there is a misconception that because that first group had been published, that was the end of that. It's not. So there's money left. We encourage people to take advantage of it if they need it. We've had about 175 or so applications that were started, of which 50 have been completed, and all of them are in review, or have been funded already. So we're trying to move really, really quickly to get the money out. We realize that speed to market is critical. So again, this thing is still open. Anybody who needs it, has any questions, let us know, and check it out. And we appreciate your time, and I will pass it to Jeff Cockrell now to talk about the program that exists at the county. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alex. I hope everyone can see me, and I hope everyone can hear me. I'm Jeff Cockrell. I'm with the Monroe County. We have a similar program in that we've had $200,000 allocated of our food and beverage money for support for tourism-related groups in the county. This is due to the governor's emergency order and their relaxation of a lot of the requirements we have. And so we've got that program. It's up and running. We On Wednesday, we issued approximately $68,000 worth of support to 10 local businesses. And our process is a little bit different, but it has the same goals. Our process is a grant program where we're not doing loans, we're doing grants, direct grants to businesses. If you want to apply, you can go to the county website, www.co.monroe.in.us, and it's for tourism-related businesses outside the city of Bloomington limits, because that's where the food and beverage funds that we have are derived from. We really have 4 criteria we look for. One is that it is sufficiently tourism-related to qualify for this. We have to substantiate the actual loss due to the COVID-19 emergency. We want to make sure that everyone's aware of federal, state, and local programs that could also help support this. And if any of them are more appropriate, we would direct them that way. And we determine the necessary funding requirements to prepare the business for full operations after the emergency subsides. So those are the kind of the 4 criteria. Our process is you go to our website, there's an application. It's fairly simple and straightforward. It asks for things such as what kind of losses you've received, how are you tourism related. It's a fairly easy and quick application process. Our county commissioners get those for review, and then one of them will reach out and interview the applicant. And then they make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, and they would then review those recommendations at their meetings. The kind of time frame we're looking at is that, if we get an application this week, it'll get reviewed for a determination for next Wednesday's meeting. So we're kind of doing it on a week-by-week basis. And again, we still have $130,000 in support money available at this time. So it's fairly straightforward. And if I know there's going to be a question and answer after this, I'm more than happy to answer those questions at that time. I think along with the city, we would look at applications, and if you're not in the county, we would alert you. And if it's in the city limits, we go ahead and we'll forward that information to you and to the city themselves. So Brian, that's what I have. And
Great. No, thank you, Jeff. So I will quickly note that for audience participants and hosts and panelists, this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the web. So if you have contacts or anyone else who might be interested, there will be a recording available. And also if you are speaking, it's being recorded. So thanks for your work. So that's the Rapid Response Fund Loan Program. There will be an opportunity to ask questions about that after the Paycheck Protection Program portion. So I will kick it over to Cindy Canarney, who is the market president at First Financial Bank. And that is an institution, like many local ones, that is doing Paycheck Protection Program loans. And she's going to give you a summary of PPP, an update and guidance on how to apply. And she'll be available to answer questions and do a breakout later. So Cindy, are you on the line?
As everyone's probably guessed, PPP has been a very busy time for our industry as we've worked to help as many clients as possible through that process. I am happy to report we have been able to close and fund numerous PPP applications in the community and throughout our footprint. PPP, the original tranche of that, has been exhausted, as you know, but Congress did pass another piece to that, which is currently being rolled out once all the approvals, et cetera, are in place. We anticipate being able to start the application process again, most likely on Monday. So as we've kind of talked about this, what I've found to be most helpful in helping clients through this process is I can't stress enough how important it is to have your information as organized as possible. Going through the first round of this, it was incredibly helpful for clients to not only assemble their payroll information for a 12-month period, but on the application, there's a place where you calculate your loan amount that you're looking to apply for. So I've certainly encouraged everyone, as they've assembled their payroll information, also do a quick and simple Excel spreadsheet that very simply lays out how you've arrived at your loan amount that you're applying for, and making sure that that also foots to the information that you will provide. And the other thing that I think is a big time saver on the application process is please make sure that all the blanks are filled out, all the questions are answered. As you can imagine, there's a large volume of these things moving through, and certainly any time that we have to stop and go back and ask questions, that just really slows down the process and slows down our ability to be able to turn these around. So just a couple, off the top helpful hints for you to consider. So on the screen, you'll see some PPP information that's been put up. As you can see, this is primarily to help facilitate a client's payroll costs. The program has been laid out to help facilitate up to 75% of the lending fund to payroll related costs. Up to 25% can be utilized for a few other specific purposes, such as mortgage interest, such as utilities, such as rent, and a couple other things. But primarily it's there to facilitate payroll. It is an SBA product. So even though it is an SBA product, these things have been facilitated through banks. Not all banks are participating in the PPP process, but there are several local banks that are. The term of the loan is a 2-year term. After roughly 60 days, we will have to go back to the SBA to certify how the funds were utilized for each borrower that received PPP proceeds, to see if any or all of those proceeds can be forgiven. That's certainly a nice feature of this. So if all the proceeds have been utilized as required and we can certify to that, the SBA is looking to forgive these loans. But if a portion of the proceeds have not been utilized as prescribed, it will turn into a loan. And you can see here the interest rate is currently at 1% on those loans. It is an unsecured credit facility. The payment deferral term is 6 months. And again, you're kind of looking at what it would take to kind of utilize and certify back to the SBA. So you have an 8-week period of time from the funding date of the loan. So if we funded yesterday, you've got 8 weeks basically to spend the money. And as I mentioned before, it should be utilized for payroll costs, interest payment on any mortgage incurred prior to February 15th of 2020, payment of rent on any lease in force prior to February 15th, 2020, and payment on any utility for which service began before February 15th of 2020. And again, probably in the next 35, 45 days, banks will have to go back and certify the use of these funds. Basically, the period of time that the SBA is looking for is that February 15th to June 30th. We've got some guidance on what we'll need to collect and look at in order to go through that certification process. But one thing to note, if you've applied for EIDL or disaster relief through the SBA and you want to apply for PPP, there's really no overlap there. So it's kind of one or the other from a loan perspective. So how to apply, the best way to apply is if you have an existing relationship with a bank, I encourage you to go to their website, contact them directly, and understand the application process. Also, please keep in mind what I mentioned earlier, the organized information, the completeness of the application. Please be mindful of that because that will definitely help speed the application and closing process along. And I think that I have covered this section. So with that, certainly I'll be interested in any questions later and happy to advise.
Thank you, Cindy. So we are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is wonderful. So I think what I'll do now is open it up to questions and answers on either the Rapid Response Fund, the Monroe County COVID-19 grants, or the Paycheck Protection Program for any of the folks who have spoken so far. So let me see what we have in the chat.
Brian, I can jump in with, there are basically 4 questions I've been asked either here or before that I wanted to be able to answer for people.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question, which was in the chat, was about, so we've indicated that there's a possibility that some nonprofits applying for loans could potentially have that loan forgiven. Let me explain why that's just a possibility and why we can't actually be black and white clear about it when the person is applying or is being given the loan. We are working towards a trying to contain loan losses, and so loan losses are not just defaults but also forgiven loans. So in other words, monies that will not ultimately come back. So what we're trying to do is manage that to some extent, and so what we are hoping is that nonprofits understand that as they're getting into this, there is a possibility, a strong possibility, that it remains a loan. And if we are seeing that default rates are not spiraling out of control, then it's at that point, which may be several months from now, that we look at the nonprofit loans and try to adjust them for forgiveness. But it's not something that we can do up front, which I know can be challenging and frustrating for people applying if they don't know exactly what's going to happen. But that's the limitation that we have, and that's the one we have to work within. So I hope hopefully that answers questions about how the loan forgiveness portion of the Bloomington version of, not the county, but the city of Bloomington's Rapid Response Fund works. Another question I've gotten is, early on as we were developing the program, we were thinking about the implications for living wage. And while philosophically, I think many of us are very strongly supportive of the living wage and really encourage people to understand that and work towards that, we also understood early on that given the nature of some of the businesses that we were trying to help, that was going to be a non-starter, that unfortunately the wages were going to be, having a living wage requirement was going to be insurmountable for some of the businesses. So there is no living wage requirement as part of this particular program. There are living wage requirements for other programs at the city, but not this particular one. So I wanted to clarify that. Third question I've gotten is about, is it only tourism in focus, tourism businesses? And let me speak to that a little bit. The county has that very strong focus because that is the exclusive source of their funds. One of the benefits of the city program is that it actually also has funding from the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, which actually casts the net wider. So it's not just tourism related. It can also be businesses that support the Bloomington Enterprise, or the Enterprise Zone in Bloomington, which is a geographical area, and the application calls for self-certification on that front. So it's a little bit broader than it would have been otherwise had we only been limited to food and beverage monies. But it allows us to scoop in more businesses than and nonprofits that we would have been able to do otherwise. And then finally, the fourth question is, when we went to market with the program, we actually went with a very conscious understanding of having sort of 2 tranches. So we had a kind of initial, this is not a structural limitation, but we thought the first effort would be about $1 million. And so the first round of applications probably come in around that number. But there would also be potentially some other monies that we wanted to not burn through immediately. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to be sure that if this thing goes on longer than federal programs are able to help us, that we also have some funding. You know, we keep some of the powder dry to be able to help in maybe post PPP, but pre-recovery periods. And so we're not going to turn people down on that front. We're not going to, stop trying to fund applications. But I just want to make sure everybody understood that we're very conscious of the fact that there are windows of federal funding that will apply. The future beyond those windows is not clear. And so what we're trying to do is also keep some of our funding available in case there's a gap that shows itself in terms of the availability of the federal, or if there is state funding as well. So those are 4 questions that I have been asked and hopefully been able to answer for you, but I'm happy to take more questions.
No, and that's great. There's a couple of follow-up questions on the chat I want to address. One is, if you have applied for PPP or EIDL from the SBA, will that count against you in your application to city funding? The answer is it absolutely will not. We just want to track what people are doing, but we encourage people to apply to everything, and it does not affect your ability to either obtain SBA funds or obtain city or county funds. The next one is, if we have part-time staff that amounts to an FTE, is that an FTE or a PTE on the city application? The answer is we have a spot for both FTEs and PTEs. So if they're part-time equivalents, just put part-time employees. And I can clarify that won't change your score. Anyone under 5 employees will be scored the same amount on the rubric. And then the next question I got, we have a lot of questions about PPP and EIDL. A good general one to start with, I think, is how should a business determine whether to apply for PPP or EIDL or both? And is the EIDL funding still available? I think Steve Bryant is probably the best candidate to answer that question. Steve, are you on? Steve, you're muted if you're on, or Troy.
Yeah, hey, sorry about that. Steve and I were having some technical problems. Can you ask me the question again? I'll be happy to answer it for you.
Sure. So we have several questions about EIDL and PPP. One is, how should a business determine whether to apply for PPP or EIDL? Is EIDL funding still available? I guess I would answer the first is you can apply for both, but not for the same set of expenses. But if you're deciding between one set of expenses, how do you decide which loan program to apply for?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Kind of what we tell clients is, obviously, if you're using it predominantly for payroll-related expenses, PPP is the better route to go for a couple reasons. One, it's much quicker because the idle process can take longer. But if you need a higher dollar amount and you need working capital, then idle is really your only option on there. Keeping in mind that idle does have to be repaid, the process though is much longer, and so you need to keep that in mind. So those are really the big determining factor is if you really need payroll related costs, go the PPP route. But if you need working capital or you want to refinance, well, you can't refinance existing debt, but you can include the debt payments on that, then idle is really the route to go. So those are kind of the 2 determining factors on that when we direct clients which one to apply for. Did that answer your question okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
We can follow up in the chat if we need to. Another question that we're getting a couple of is, how do sole proprietors fit into the PPP program? So one question is, can you get both pandemic unemployment and PPP if you're a sole proprietor? I'm assuming not, but Troy would know. And the second question is, if you have independent contractors that are part of your regular workforce, how do you qualify for PPP? Do you count them as part of your payroll, even if they're independent contractors? Or how should you apply for PPP, and can you?
Okay, good question. I'm glad this one came up. Okay, the rule on independent contractors is, and this got confusing there for a while, on the PPP program, independent contractors cannot be included as part of your payroll costs they would be eligible to apply for their own PPP program because they're considered self-employed. So no, they cannot be included on payroll-related cost. So there was confusion on that at first because they said sole proprietors, they could include, they're eligible for PPP, but they could also include the contractor cost. But no, that got clarified later on to say because contractors are considered their own sole proprietors, they need to apply for that separately.
Okay, great. And I should clarify that Troy and Steve Bryant are representing the Indiana Small Business Development Center. Steve also works at the Cook Center for Entrepreneurship at Ivy Tech. So that is our regional liaison for the Federal Small Business Administration. I'm about to post their website where they have a lot of resources. So another question I got is if for property owners, if they're a property management company without employees, is there any relief available for rent, or should they just apply to programs as a business, as a property management business? I guess one would be for the SBA, and then secondly for the city and county programs.
Do you want me to tackle the SBA first? And
if
then,
you could, Troy.
Okay, yeah. If there's no employees involved, that would be eligible for the EIDL program. But of course, PPP, theoretically, you can include rent or property related expenses on the PPP, but you need to have employees behind it because 75% of it must be used for the employment cost. So in that example, it would need to flip to an EIDL loan. But yes, EIDL could be used for that purpose.
And I'll speak to the Rapid Response Fund for the city of Bloomington side anyway. I would encourage people to submit an application in that case. We are interested in focus, in helping retain employment, but on the other hand, we also understand that businesses are taking it on the chin relative to fixed costs when their revenue's dried up. So, we would look at that very closely and try to make a judgment based on the impact of COVID on their business economics, particularly if the owner is considering that income as part of their income package and that's drying up. And so we would take a look at that very closely. We are trying to do everything we can on our side to get to a yes. So, I would encourage people to apply, and we'll do whatever we can to help.
Another question we got that could be applicable to everyone is, if you do not have a bank that is an SBA lender, or your bank is not accepting PPP applications, where should you go? We're going to meet some lenders who can answer that question in the next phase. But if Troy, if you have some advice from the SBA, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, actually I do. And as of this morning, I mean, literally right before we got on the call, we received a list from the SBA of all PPP lenders. And so we do now have a list of some of the banks that do not require an existing relationship in order to do the loan. So reach out to us if you would, and we'll be happy to refer you to a bank that you can go to, even if you have no prior relationship with them. Literally, that came out to us just before we got on the call. So we're able to help out a little bit more on that.
Okay, great. Another question is, if you're a home-based business, does it qualify to pay for your mortgage interest and utilities on your personal property with the SBA funding? I think that would be with the PPP. Sorry, Troy, you're muted if you're answering that.
Sorry. I'm every time I click that button, it wants to go back to mute on me. I said, wow, these questions are getting tougher. And this is a technical question that we would probably need to address with this person individually to assess this. But as a general rule, if you're a sole proprietor and you're working out of your home, and you have included the cost of that, the home office expenses on your income taxes, then whatever percent of that you've included on your income taxes, you would be eligible to include on the SBA back loan. So they're gonna defer back to the percent that you're taking off as a tax deduction and ask you to certify that. But yes, then that part would be eligible to include on an SBA loan.
Okay. And then we've gotten 2 questions on the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which we're referring to as EIDL. One is, will the advance loan portion be part of the next round of upcoming funding passed yesterday? And a second is, any idea on the timing of EIDL? Folks have applied in the last couple of weeks, but more information on the timing would be appreciated.
The answer to the first question is, as we've been told now, there are no changes being made to that program. So in regards to will the advance stay the same, the answer, as we understand it, we've been told right now, the answer to the question is yes. We haven't been told of any changes, but we're still getting some information on that. The one change that is being told to us is that now, in particular for the PPP loan side, there has been an offset specifically for rural and small businesses in rural communities. So these smaller banks, there's an offset of some of that money that will be dedicated just to make sure that this money does go to small businesses. And that's in regards, you know, you're hearing on the news, some of these bigger companies got some of these loans and when they really didn't need it. So now they put in a couple safeguards. One, the applicant will have to show or will have to certify that they cannot get funding through traditional means. And 2, there is an offset for some of those funds. So anyway, other than that, we haven't really been given any changes to the program. In terms of a time frame, the way it'll work is if you've already applied and you've got an application pending, as soon as those funds are available, they'll go ahead and get an approval for you and move forward. So the actual window there, you know, if it took you 6 weeks to get your approval initially, which we were seeing that was about the average, that 6 weeks will still apply. But if you've already applied, it'll, as soon as the funds are available, it'll release for processing.
Okay, great. So I'm going to cut the first Q&A session there. Remember, during the breakouts, if you want to ask more questions of the SBA or of the ESR working group or the county, stay in this meeting and you can ask it during the breakout session. But we're about to meet the lenders who are assembled, who will have their own breakout sessions where you can directly engage with them on the program. So let's do the local banks first. So just please keep it brief, 1 to 2 minutes, about who you are, who you're serving, and how folks can get in touch with you. And then if folks are interested, there'll be an opportunity in the Zoom breakouts at approximately 11 a.m. to go to each Zoom room with each lender. So First Financial Bank, Cindy Canarney gave the presentation. Cindy, what else can you tell us?
Information out on our website, Brian, and that can be found at www.bankatfirst.com. So if anybody wants any information on the program, details, how to apply, information needed, etc., it can definitely be found out on our website. You can also email me directly at cindy.canarney@bankatfirst.com. Again, that's cindy.kinnarney@bankatfirst.com.
Okay, great. So next, in alphabetical order, German American Bank. Steve Bishop, are you on the phone, or anyone else from German American? If you are, we can't hear you. Okay. Old National Bank. Is Scott Shishman on the phone, or anyone else from Old National Bank?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I think Cindy did a nice job of describing the program. We are knee deep in, we're getting through our first round. We funded over $1.3 billion in PPP loans, which is a lot of loans for a bank of our size. We are teeing up and getting ready for round 2. And I would tell you that organization is essential. The people that are doing this stuff do not have time or patience, although we're very patient people. We don't have time or patience for unorganized folks. And so Cindy's suggestions about being organized is excellent. If you go to our website, which is www.oldnational.com, we have a complete package. We have a calculator, which is an Excel spreadsheet that is the basis for all applications. The calculator, so if you put a number in the calculator, you need to also provide backup supporting that, that number that you put in there. If you do that, you will have a pretty solid application, and then we can help you get it through. Right now, if you go to our website, it says that we are not accepting new applications. The truth of the matter is we're not accepting them right now because of the fact that there is no money to go on right now. I'm getting emails, and I heard from Senator Rubio, we are going live probably Monday morning. But that doesn't mean we're not, the individuals are not working on it. It's just that through the website, we're not accepting new ones. When we go live, we will be accepting new ones. If you need to work with somebody, and you have a relationship with a bank, please work with your relationship manager at the bank. If you need help, you can always reach out to me personally. I've been helping a lot of people as needed. And my email address is, I got a tough last name, but scott.shishman, SHISHMAN, @oldnational.com. I appreciate what Brian and the rest of the do-gooders here at the City of Bloomington are doing for everybody. Let's hang in together, and we can fight our way through this. Please be kind to your fellow businesses. Please be kind to the bankers. The bankers are, believe it or not, trying hard to get these PPPs done, but there's a lot of volume and a lot of requests, and so please be patient. We're doing our best. If you get an SBA number, that means you're guaranteed to get the funds. If you get an SBA number, then please be patient and give the folks a little time to process these loans. We got a lot of loans to process. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Scott Shishman from Old National Bank. Is Bob Taylor or another representative from People's State Bank on the line? If you are, you're on mute. Okay. We will still offer those banks an opportunity to host a breakout session. Let's go to the CDFIs. So CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution. We have several CDFIs that serve our market, some of whom are doing PPP. So I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves, what activity they're doing in response to COVID-19 briefly. We'll go in alphabetical order. So is Kyle Fawcett or another representative from Bankable here?
Yeah, Brian, I'm here. Thanks for that. So we are Bankable. As Brian said, we're a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. We are based out of Anderson, Indiana, which is just north of Indianapolis. We are a nonprofit organization that serves the state of Indiana. Typically, we work with businesses that are not ready for traditional financing at a bank, so before a bank, to give small business loans and technical assistance and coaching. We are doing PPP during this time. We have some new funding, so we are starting applications now to get those ready to go. Obviously, being a small nonprofit lender, we don't have the lending capacity that your bank would, so I would still urge you to be talking with your lender to see what opportunities you have there, as well as the list that Troy had mentioned. In addition to PPP, we are offering some small, what we would call microloan products that are based upon relief, specifically in the Bloomington area as well. I'll talk more about those in the breakout room, but we're calling those, first one is called a reboot loan. So that will be focused on the businesses that have unfortunately had to close or basically close, very, very limited operations. And they may need some money to basically restart the business whenever that time comes, maybe for initial payroll, inventory, that kind of stuff. So we are taking applications today for those loans, as well as what we're calling a quick bridge loan, which is very similar to a lot of the loans being talked about. So just another option there. That's meant for businesses that are operating still, but kind of, trudging their way along, basically trying to bridge them towards federal funds or towards clearer water. So I can talk more about those in the breakout room. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Kyle. So we also have with us from Sinair, Keith Broadnax, who's the Senior VP of Business Development for Sinair. Keith, are you still on the line? Okay. We also have Phil Black from the Community Investment Fund of Indiana. Indiana's statewide CDFI. Are you on the line, Phil?
Yes, Brian. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Brian?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. I am Phil Black, the Executive Director of the Community Investment Fund of Indiana. And we are one of the CDFIs on the call, Community Development Financial Institution. We're a statewide lender. Like Kyle mentioned, we focus on customers that may not be eligible for bank financing. What we're essentially trying to do with both our existing customers and new customers, but we are not focusing on any startups right now, is to certainly guide them toward the resources that would be available from the SBA and the feds, some of the programs that have already been talked about. But also we're focusing on, revitalization now, or life after we all open our business again. And we're thinking of loans that would bridge the gap between some other loans that you may have received from your bank or through these programs. So we're looking at loans up to $50,000 that can be used to help grow your businesses or to meet the expense of some of the new protocols that you may be required to take care of. Some of those new protocols, we don't know about them all yet, but we know that there are a cost associated with some of the protocols you might put in place after you open the doors. Our interest rate starts at 6%, and we, depending on the loan application, there could be a deferment period initially for the loan. So we're here to sort of fill in the gaps between our partners. We're statewide, so we can work with CDFI Friendly Bloomington or any other organization that may be in the game of helping investing in businesses and keep them open or keep them restarted. I'll be happy to talk about that in more detail at the break and answer any questions during that time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Phil. So we have one more CDFI from IFF. We have Andre Gibson on the line, I think.
Yeah, Brian, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Andre Gibson. I'm the Director of Lending for IFF. We are a CDFI, as some of these others here on the call. We're based out of Chicago, Illinois. We service mainly in the Midwest. Our mission is to strengthen nonprofits and the communities in which they serve. And we do that by a couple of different ways. Two of our primary ways, one through our lending. We offer facilities loans, facility improvement loans, equipment loans. We also work in the affordable housing market, and we work with new market tax credits. We also have a real estate consulting arm, which we call Real Estate Solutions, and they help nonprofits with feasibility, financial feasibility studies, facilities assessments on whether or not they may need to relocate, potentially expand their facilities. They also help with strategic planning and site search and due diligence. So that's kind of our primary offerings here. But here lately, as you can imagine, over the last few weeks, we have been concentrating on PPP program. And we have partnered with a CDFI based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, called Community Reinvestment Fund, in which we are working specifically with nonprofits who have had issues accessing PPP. So in that partnership, what we've done is to be able to create a streamlined mechanism to be able to get these folks in the queue so that if they are unable to do so with their traditional banking lenders, they are able to come to us and we're able to help facilitate those loans. the partnership with CRF, since they are a SBA certified lender, we are really working as a referral source as well as a technical assistance provider to be able to help these nonprofits get access to PPP. If they were to go online, they can go on and look at a simple application or a loading dock at iff.org, www.iff.org, and it will take them and walk them right through the application process. And just as Scott was saying, we also have a PPP payroll calculator on that site as well. So if there's, if they need assistance helping to get that filled out, we're able to provide TA there as well. My email address is agibson, Gibson, agibson @iff.org. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. So I left out one local bank, and that's my fault. Bob Taylor and Jerry Hayes are here from Owen County State Bank. Owen County State Bank, are y'all on the phone? If you are, we can't hear you. Okay, I'll give, is someone from German American Bank on the phone? Okay. And again, there will be a chance to speak with each of these lenders in a breakout room. We have one more category of lender online. So it was mentioned in the chat that some fintech representatives can handle PPP, which is true. This is a fintech provider called Blue Acorn that is a free liaison service that will take your PPP application and streamline it and send it out to multiple providers for you. So I will kick it over to Andrew and Jimmy from Blue Acorn quickly to introduce themselves.
Hey, this is Andrew. Thank you again, Brian, for having us. Just a little background on myself. I've been a huge fan of various programs like this. I was a huge proponent of enterprise zones back in the day, was a big advocate of helping lenders understand how to leverage enterprise zones and help out small businesses in those zones. More recently, we've been involved with the opportunity zones, and then as this big challenge that we're all facing came upon us, we shifted gears and we worked on a platform that you can find us at blueacorn.co. And it's primarily about helping to streamline that application process. I'm so excited to hear all these folks chewing on this challenge. This has been very inspiring for myself, and so I really thank you all for this. But yes, our platform is primarily just to help streamline the process. We're working with multiple lenders on the back end, so we're trying to work with as many organizations that are taking on this challenge. And you can go to the website for the application process. And then as we are working with more and more CDFIs, lenders, banks, we'll add that to the list. We're about a few thousand folks who've already applied. So yes, we encourage folks to go ahead and take a look at the site. If you have any questions, reach out to myself. My email address is andrew@blueacorn.co. And Jimmy, unfortunately, he's juggling a few things. As you can imagine, we're on multiple projects here, but his email address is also jimmy@blueacorn.co. So here to answer any questions or help out in any way we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So now that is all of our lenders. We do have someone from Indiana University Credit Union on the phone, but to my knowledge, Tony, you are not taking PP applications. Is that correct?
Yes, Brian, that is correct, but we do have a direct link on our website. We have partnered with one of the nation's leading small business loan online marketplaces, a company called Lendio, in order to have our members have a way to apply for the PPP loans. And so you can go directly to our website to apply for those loans.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so we've met all the lenders who are assembled here. Now let's turn you loose to have a chance to engage with them individually. So the way this works is if you want to talk to a government source or the SBA or one of the ESR working group members, stay in this Zoom chat. If you want to talk to one of the lenders you've heard from today, you will go to a Zoom link provided by Erin Craigmore from the Chamber of Commerce in the chat. She's already done it. If you want to talk to Bankable, they have their own specific Zoom link they've set up, and that's been provided in the chat. So I will kick it over to Aaron briefly to explain what the procedure is for utilizing the breakout.
All right, thank you, Brian. Hello, everybody. It's good to see all of your faces and some new people as well. I've just reshared the link again because actually user error, did it too soon. If you press enter along this way, it doesn't give you a space. It just throws it up there in the chat. So it's there for you again. So just like Brian said, if you want to talk to Bankable, there's a link there for their Zoom. All other lenders, you're going to go to that second link available. And then if you have general questions or just need to kind of talk through some other things, that would be stay here in this Zoom call. Once you get to your Zoom link, if you're going to the all other lenders, once I'm going to get a chance for everybody, I'll meet you there. I'll get everybody a chance to make it over to the Zoom link. Give you about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I will disperse everybody into breakout rooms with the lenders once I get a sense of how many people are there and how many breakout rooms we're going to need. So if you have any questions, I will put my email in the chat as well, and you're welcome to email me if you're having any difficulty during the all other lenders Zoom breakout session. Back to you, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. So for any folks that want to jump off and head to the lender breakout session, please do so now. If you are leaving us entirely, thank you so much for your time. You can always ask questions about the city program to the Economic Vitality website, web address, email address provided. I've put a lot of resources on the chat about individual lenders. The isbdc.org site has a lot of great resources. And if you send us your email address, either to economicvitality@bloomington.in.gov or my email address, cdfifriendly@cfbmc.org, which I'll put in. We will send you the resources we have as a PDF as well as a link to this video. So with that said, again, everyone who wants to meet with an individual lender and the individual lenders should go to Aaron's other Zoom link that is available in the chat. I see a couple of lenders still in the Zoom, which is interesting, but maybe the way it works is that Aaron diverts you from here. But barring that, we can open it up to further questions about either the City Rapid Response Fund Loan Program, the County COVID-19 Grant Relief Grant, or either the SBA programs, or really anything else that might be relevant to you.
And perhaps, Brian, to manage the questions on this continuing room, if everybody's familiar with being able to raise your hand, that might be the best way to handle that. Do you want to explain?
Alex, are you talking about physically raising your hand in the video, or there's an option on Zoom? I see some folks raising their hand.
Okay, well, there are two options. It might be better to raise your hand in the Zoom function, but maybe we can start. Marianne, I think you had a question. I think you were raising your hand, so I'm going to try to manage this here. Give me 1 second. All right, Marianne, you are unmuted.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Marianne Iria, and I'm from Monroe County Civic Theater. And for the arts nonprofit funding, will there be a session on that, or do I have to go into the Zoom lender rooms? Or we do not have a paid employee or anything.
Yeah, so maybe, and Jane Cooper-Smith is here as well. Jane, we can bring you into this conversation. There's a portion of the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association funding that was set aside for longer-term arts grants, and that's in addition to grants that already exist as part of the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association and the Bloomington Arts Commission. So there's some monies that have been set aside, both in the nearer term and the longer term. And maybe Jane, do you want to talk a little bit about how that will play itself out?
Sure. Yes. So you would be eligible for the rapid response loan, even though you're located in the county, because you're a nonprofit. You would be eligible to take the city's RRF loan. You would also be eligible to apply for the BUEA and the BAC Rapid Relief Arts Grant funding. Those details are still being ironed out, and there will be announcements about when that application process is going live. So the short answer is that you could apply for city funding, you could apply for county grants because you're in the county. In future, when we announce the details, also apply for the rapid relief art grants. So you have quite a few options given your location and your
So I can apply for the Rapid Relief Fund and the county fund grant and the BAC, or is it BEAD, or?
Yeah. Why don't I go ahead and I'll message you my email address and we can have a specific communication that way. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I see there's a question. Ruth has raised her hand. So Ruth, I'm going to unmute you from here. And if you want to unmute yourself, you need to do that additionally.
Yes, I have a question. I'm part of By Hand Gallery. We don't have a full-time person. We have 2 part-time people, which amounts to 6 days a week. Would that count as a full-time person to apply for one of the Bloomington grants, or would that disqualify us?
No, please do apply. We do capture either a full-time or part-time numbers. We'd like to, so we want to accommodate people who are in your situation. We will, again, we're trying to do everything we can to get to yes for people. So I would encourage you to pursue the Bloomington Rapid Response Fund.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
MJT has a hand up, so I'm going to unmute from this end, and if that person can unmute. Yep, there you are.
Hey, Alex. Hey, everybody. Mark Cheetah, and I'm here with Lotus Education Arts Foundation, as well as with Stages Bloomington. And Marianne, I'll reach out to you separately so some of the theater companies can be talking. Alex, I have a question for you regarding the application process for the Bloomington Rapid Response. Working as a nonprofit, the website is requiring a credit report for an individual. And I'm wondering if you could address, do we need to pull a credit report from our executive director or board president? Or is there something we can put in place of a credit report since we don't really have an owner?
Yeah, and Jane, I don't know if you want to talk about the changes we made recently to the process.
So we were, for all the loans, requiring a personal guarantee, and we've removed that requirement for the nonprofits. So I would think it's also okay not to pull the credit report in this case, because the loan is not related to the personal credit of the director of the organization.
Okay. I think as of yesterday, you were required to attach something to get to the next screen in the application portal.
Can you just attach a Word document and say,
great,
advised?
Wonderful. That's exactly the advice I was looking for. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, great.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for everything.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you. Mike Trotsky, I see your hand is up, so we will unmute you. Go ahead.
I was just curious. I think this is, if Troy's still on, this is a question for him. We applied for the EIDL in anticipation of the rapid advance on April 1st and have not received any funds. And did receive an email on the 14th that was the adjustment, to explain the adjustment down to $1,000 per employee as opposed to what we originally thought was $10,000. I don't know if that's abnormal or at what point I should be attempting to follow up on that, or if it's supposed to be sort of a 3-day thing. What is the response that people are seeing? And it's been 23 days. Should I be concerned, and what should I do if I am?
Hey, yeah, this is Troy. Tell me again, what date did you apply for this initially?
I think it was April 1st.
Okay, so the good news is I think everything's right on track. The fact you've gotten an email back from them about the adjustment means it's in queue and it's working. As a rule of thumb here, the people that applied when this first came out have just been getting their funds awarded within the last week. So it's working. It sounds like it's working through the process. Everything's going normally. It just takes some time. As a rule, you'll want to give, it's on average, think of it as taking about 6 weeks to get through the process. So if you applied in early April, here within the next week or two, you should be getting your final notice on this.
I actually don't think we're going to end up doing EIDL because we're doing PPP. I didn't totally understand that at the time, right? And so I applied, right, and probably am only going to use whatever the first part of the advance is.
Right.
And probably not go through, probably not go through the rest of the process. And unfortunately, just to make sure everyone knows about that when they apply, that it's $1,000 per employee. I wish we had done it differently had I have known that. It's complicated, but we're at Sproutbox and we have, Sproutbox actually employs all the employees for several other companies. And so we applied as one of the smaller companies that's most troubled, when we probably should have applied as Sproutbox as a whole in order to hit that 10 because we have 18 employees at Sproutbox as a whole. So I was disappointed when I got that email, and also just that it's taken longer than I anticipate. But just want to make sure everybody's aware that it is $1,000 per employee.
Yeah, the other thing you want to keep in mind on that too is that if you take the employee portion through idle, any money you get awarded out of PPP will be reduced by that amount. So you just, you can't, there's a strict rule on you can't double dip. You can't get money for employees on the idle side and the PPP both. So it'll net out okay, but it's just kind of a clarification on that. Did that make sense?
Yes. So okay. The money that I get on that advance, I need to deduct from what the PPP.
Yeah, pretty much, but they'll do it for you. I mean, they'll kind of know that you've gotten, that it will come through. But yes, if you want to make sure you disclose that to the bank when you get your PPP, that you've gotten the advance for the employee side on the idle side. Because what you don't want to happen here is that it not get disclosed and then you have to pay that back at the end. So you just make sure you're upfront with them about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So there's a question, Samuel Dove has a hand up and a very cute screenshot picture. So I'm gonna unmute you. So you have to unmute yourself.
Really quickly, Alex, let me interject and then Samuel, go ahead. So folks, if anybody is trying to get into the lender breakouts, Aaron Predmore has set up a separate link and you need to leave this meeting to do that. So Cindy Canarney, another couple of lenders are ready to speak to folks who have individual questions for lenders. If you're struggling to get there, it's because you have to leave this event and go to the separate join Zoom link that I just posted in the group chat. Okay, go ahead, Sammy. Samuel, we can hear something.
Sounds like there's.
Let's unmute Jill Pierce. Jill Pierce has her physical hand up and appears ready to speak in sentences.
Thank you. I don't know how to do a virtual hand up, so I've just been doing this. So I work for a property management company. I don't feel like my question got clearly addressed in the chat, which is we manage properties for other owners. We don't own them. So the missing rent that owners are experiencing due to COVID, their tenants losing income and such, our property owners are missing rent from this. So is there a way that they, as property owners, just independent people that own properties, you know, and it's through their social security number, so they would be sole proprietors, is there a way that they can get aid for this lost rent? I feel like I heard that they wouldn't qualify for maybe federal aid. They don't have employees. And when that question came up earlier, for our own business, we have employees, you know, we make money a percentage of rent income. So we can apply for PPP on our own. But my concern is for our property owners who are our clients that are losing rental income, individuals. Is there anything that applies to them? Maybe through the rapid response? Because I don't think SBA or federal applies to them with this because they don't have employees.
So let me try to address that best I can. So I think I understand you saying there are basically two entities that you're trying to differentiate. Your entity is the management company. You've got the employees. You've gotten that answer. You know your path forward for yourselves. And so we'll leave that aside. And what you're asking is, if you represent a property owner who's a sole proprietor, has a rental property, maybe like is it a tourism related rental property?
No, these are all, you know, student and family rentals. We actually have about maybe 35 property owners, 100 properties. I manage the accounting and finances for all of them. So I'm watching them lose income, you know. Yeah. Individuals, so they may own from 1 to 5 houses on their own.
So it's more kind of student housing potentially than like tourism housing. Yeah. So I think the answer to that is it depends, and I hate to put it that way, but we, you know, there are some limitations on the funding that we have relative to either the kind of businesses that are going to be supported or the location of those businesses. We are trying to be as generous as we can be within the, you know, the limitations of the law to try to make that as expansive as possible. So in the application process for the Bloomington Rapid Response Fund loan program, one of the questions is, are you within or do you serve the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association? And so I think what I would probably encourage you on their behalf, or them on their own behalf, to do would be, if you go to the City of Bloomington's webpage and you go to and you just type in BUEA, which is Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, it'll go to a page in the website that has a map, actually. So you can click on the map, you can see what the Urban Enterprise Association is. And so, you know, I think probably the best thing is to try to figure out in advance, or would you fit that second qualification? Because it would be more appropriate to be sourced from that funding source. And if that's the case, then absolutely it's worth going through that application process. If it's not, then it's probably not worth their effort to do it, because it would be a lot of effort and the chances of them being successful would be somewhat limited.
So with the rapid response, though, you don't think it's applicable for these people? You know, the expenses they have are the maintenance of the house and the management fees they pay. And, you know, a lot of these people, it's their income. They have mortgages on a lot of their houses, so that they pay from the rental income. You know, it goes down the line. So I'm just trying to, I haven't really seen where the property owners fit into this situation, or to these aid packages available, you know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Troy's still on about the emergency, the non-PPP version of the SBA. Is Troy still there?
Yeah, I was listening to this too. This is a tricky one. And this is one we might want to talk about in more detail offline, because I think this thing could go either way. My gut on it says that the property owner managers on this probably would have trouble getting SBA funding on this too. Now, you know, if they're sole proprietors and they're trying to pay their rent, then they could. So So yeah, I guess my wishy-washy answer to this is it depends. There's so many deliverables on this. This might be one where we would need to get someone from the SBA on the phone with us, and we can certainly facilitate that to try to get an answer. But off the cuff, I think the SBA side of this is going to be pretty limited in their ability to help. I do know if there's any option at all, it would be on the idle side, not on the PPP side. Sorry, that's the best I can do. We'd probably need to talk offline more detail on that.
Okay, thank you. That's what I figured. And I mean, it's interesting. So this, we are also having students and tenants who want.
Jill, is anybody else having trouble hearing Jill? You faded in and out, Jill.
You know, there's just a lot of layers to the situation for a property owner who has a mortgage, and we have the leases, you know, but we can't take legal action. Not that we would now really, but thank you for that. I will maybe email you if I have further questions about this. One final question that can be really quick, just to clarify, it sounds like PPE is only available if you have employees. Any kind of sole proprietor that does not have an employee, even if they have contract labor helpers, they probably have to seek unemployment.
That's not necessarily true. A sole proprietor themselves can apply for a PPP loan because their own business, they've been affected as the sole proprietor. So they can apply, you know, to cover some of their own related expenses on that. So you're right, the contractors are excluded, but the sole proprietors are eligible to apply on their own. So they could get a PPP loan to cover some of their own loss of income in that case.
Without any employees.
Right, because the sole proprietor themselves is considered an employee of the business. So they would have one employee because the sole proprietor would be an employee.
Wow.
That help?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So I'm looking at the participant list, and typically someone with a raised hand in there would have clicked that, but I don't see any. I'm also looking at the screens to see if anybody's physically raising their hand. And I don't see any of that. Oh, Michelle's raising her hand. All right, hold on a sec.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi guys, thank you. I guess I did just want to clarify. So I've pretty much applied for everything, I think, at this point. And I was kind of waiting on the pandemic unemployment to drop as well. I guess I'm just not super clear on like what order to take things if they come, really, and if I should still even be applying for pandemic unemployment, because I understand I can't really draw that and be eligible for maybe the PPP for anything, maybe. For
What's
everything.
your, Michelle, what's your organizational structure?
So I am a sole proprietor right now. I have about one contractor that works for me. So it's pretty low key at this time.
Troy, can you advise generally order of events for a sole proprietor with one employee?
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, nice to hear from you again. Hi. I think in your case, it's not going to hurt to apply for everything that's available to you, because let's say the PPP process, that one tends to work much quicker. But even if you're awarded an EIDL loan, you have the ability to turn it down. So you want to, just because they offer it, you're not required to take it. And that process in and of itself takes so much longer that we're saying you may as well apply for the PPP if you can, because you're going to get an answer on that much quicker. And if it isn't available, you're already in the queue for an EIDL loan, realizing that even if you get the PPP and then they offer the EIDL, just turn the EIDL down and no harm, no foul. The other thing is, even if you turn down the idle, you're still eligible to come back before the time frame ends and say, okay, now I need this, now can I accept it? So it's kind of like you're approved up to an amount as long as the program's out there, then you can accept it later. So my advice, apply for everything if the PPP comes up, take it. If not, the idle will be out there and you'll be able to take it. Even if you take the idle and it has payroll related expenses on it, you can still say, I don't want to take that portion from the PPP because I got it from the idle, and they'll just reduce them. You can take the difference.
Okay.
That help?
That helped. Thanks, Troy. Yeah, I applied for the idle like maybe almost 2 weeks ago, and my PPP application was in mid-application when my lender informed me that the funds had run out. So I assume it's in the queue, basically. And then, like, would you say it's a good idea to, like, not that the pandemic unemployment has dropped yet, but in the meantime, since there's still such a, like, wait period, like, if we were to get unemployment, could we draw unemployment until some of the other funding comes in?
Yes.
Okay. I think that helped a lot. Thank you.
Okay, good. Reach out if you have any other questions, okay?
I will. Thanks.
So Sean Starwoods is on the phone, and because there are a lot of arts organizations still here, I wanted to give him an opportunity to chime in if he's still there. Sean, are you there?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Everybody can hear me, right? Yeah, so Jane kind of covered this too. So just for the arts folks, we will be issuing a new grant program that will start accepting applications next week. So we're partnering with the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association and the BAC are doing a joint kind of rapid response grant that will be distributing about $80,000 out into the community to various arts and culture nonprofits if you qualify. So be on the lookout. I included my email in the chat box. So just email me if you're curious, if you're an arts and culture nonprofit. We'll have more information about that going out next week. And then, yeah.
Thanks, Sean. Okay. Any other questions? Any other hands up? I'm just going to do one last look here. Looks like we're clear in the participant list, and I'm not seeing hands physically raised. So why don't we wrap this up? Oh, wait. We do have a hand. Corinna?
Yes, I have one quick question. I also am a business owner, a sole proprietor, and I have obviously all these independent contractors who are regular people. I think we've covered most of that, the answers to those questions. But doing the PPP loan, then now they've added all these new instructions for sole proprietors. But it still asks you, you know, how many employees is this loan for? What is this, you know, how many jobs are being covered by this? Is the answer to that always just going to be one, that you as the sole proprietor are your only employee?
Yeah, this is Troy. Yes, the answer to the question is one, because the sole proprietor, you are the only employee on that unless you have them on payroll and you're taking out payroll taxes. You have one employee.
Yeah, no, they're independent contractors. And then in addition to that, I applied for the EIDL loan at the very beginning, and I did get funding from that, but I got like a teeny fraction. I mean, I got $1,000 payment from them, which I don't know if that's the paycheck advance, you know, if that was the emergency advance money. And so I've included that $1,000 on my PPP application because, you know, to avoid double dipping, so to speak. But is that the correct way to do that, to include that $1,000 as the advance?
Yes, you get a star for the day. You did that exactly right. And to answer your question, the $1,000 it was $1,000 per employee, and you had one employee because it's a sole proprietor. So that's why you got it. But yes, you did everything right.
Okay, but so that's the extent of the disaster loan that
Well,
I applied for.
Did
But we
you
don't
include, you don't necessarily know yet. And that's, you know, what, by getting the $1,000, it means, okay, yes, they processed your loan, they view you as eligible, so they're kicking this out there while they continue to process the rest of the loan and come back with a remaining offer if there is any. So you could still get additional funds if you included other things in part of your EIDL application. So it does not necessarily mean you're only getting 1,000. You could still get more.
Okay, and so from what I understand from the PPP application now as a sole proprietor, it's asking you, essentially that's covering my payroll, my profit, my take home pay as the owner of the business.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The PPP is covering
that's
only
great.
you because you're the only employee. Okay, good.
We're getting.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a hand raised, Galaxy S10 Plus.
Yes, my name is Thurston, and I'm from Titan Acquisition, and I was trying to find out how could I join the meeting for the loan. I was trying to join that meeting, but it don't give me no instructions or the password.
So you're trying to go to the lender, the lender breakout rooms?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to go to the, have you gone to the chat room?
No, I can switch to the chat room.
But if you go into the chat, I'm going to repost. There's a breakout room for lenders. And if you go to chat, I'm going to put that back in at the bottom.
Well, I see Jane Cuppersmith at Bloomington.in.gov. Okay, now I see hello folks back from the break room.
So, hold on a second. I'm gonna send an email here to everyone. So I'm putting in a chat right now.
Okay.
You should see it from me, Alex Crowley, and you should see it as the link to the lenders breakout room. You see that?
Yes.
So why don't you copy that link? Brian, what's the best way for him to get to the lender breakout room?
Well, we just came from the lenders room. So we have Andrew from Blue Acorn here in this room. So you can contact him directly. I can send you all back to the breakout room link if you want to talk to Bankable Enterprises. And then Bankable Enterprises, Esther Bryant, are you still online?
I am. I'm here.
Okay. So we have those two folks are available to chat. And then I don't think there's any bankers left in that room as they already dealt with the folks who went over there to break out.
Okay.
But I'm happy to introduce you to any of them on a sidebar. So if you want to email me at the address I'm putting in the chat, I can introduce you to whichever organization you're interested in directly.
Definitely would.
Okay, great. Any other questions then? I'm looking here. It looks like we're clear. I don't see any hands waving. Okay, why don't we wrap this up? Thank you, Brian, for pulling it all together and everybody who showed up on the CDFI side, on the lender side, and on folks from all over the community. And we really appreciate you all to participate. And there are a bunch of contacts in the chat room. So if you want to scroll through that before you leave the meeting and pull anything down that you need to. Brian, do you know offhand, or Jane, can someone extract the chat?
Yeah, I think you can. You can download the chat history. And the other thing I've just put in there is if you, and again, this is voluntary, it's not mandatory. If you want PDFs of the Small Business Administration resources, the links to the contacts and the lenders that you've heard from today, just email us either at the CDFI friendly email I put in the chat or at economicvitality@bloomington.in.gov, also in the chat. And we will send you a suite of resources that we've compiled for attendees of this meeting.
All right. So, Brian, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think that's good. For any folks who have questions, you've got all our contact info, you've got the links to apply. And I think if there was one message, it's that you can apply to all these programs, and you definitely should. You're not locked into anything. You could apply, get the award, and then decide you don't need it. But it's definitely worth applying. So thanks for your time, and please continue to give us feedback about how we can be of service. And thank you so much. Good luck.